everyone.
Hello.
Jarvis Cocker, everybody.
Good afternoon.
National treasure.
Hi.
Sheffield's greatest export. Well, apart from steel, perhaps.
Or Henderson's relish.
Oh, yes. Cool, I forgot relish.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm very low on condiment knowledge this afternoon. Sorry
Many
about that.
people are.
Sorry, Jarvis. And Chilly Gonzales, a master musician, has worked with the likes of Daft Punk and Drake. I can see a lot of Drake fans here in the audience tonight. Chilly Gonzales, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon, I should say. And the reason that these two unlikely bedfellows, you may think, are together...
No one's got any photos of that.
That's actually not true. We're going to be showing one on this screen in a few moments' time. It's because of their shared, what would you say, shared love, shared admiration for probably one of the world's most famous hotels, or a room in one of the world's
I
most
don't know if
famous
it's
hotels.
full admiration.
Perhaps fascination.
Fascination.
Room 29 at the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles.
Yes, which is a hotel in Hollywood, which I happened to stay in that room. I was on tour with Pulp, and I got upgraded to this weird room. And the big thing about it was it had a piano in it, and suddenly like a little light bulb went off above my head, literally. And I don't know where it came from. And we had this idea of maybe doing a set of songs, a song cycle about the things that had happened in this room over the years. And because I've been an admirer of Gonzales's work for many years, we started to work on it, and that's what we're performing up here at Edinburgh at the moment. Yeah.
Some of the stories about the Chateau Marmont are legendary, but for those that don't know, who are we talking about here? Who are the stories?
Well, Jarvis and I were more interested in the Hollywood connection, the fact that when Hollywood was really coming into its own, the hotel also came into its own. So there's some later stories of rock and roll decadence. We didn't really go there because we were sort of interested in the origin story of the moving image, essentially. We all grew up with it. And I think Jarvis and I both have written many songs about, you know, the tragic gap between fantasy and reality. And in a way that starts with watching TV or watching movies, thinking your life should be like that. And that can create problems, obviously. And so I think we were curious about when did that start? And it really started when the first people saw, you know, that giant close-up of a face on the screen and sort of started to confuse that with their own lives.
And what role did the Chateau Marmont play in all of this? Is this where all the stars stayed?
Well, I think it's a conceptual place, as Jarvis sings in the title track. You know, Room 29 is where you face yourself. So I think it's not so much necessarily about, you know, exactly all the crazy things that happened there. Those are just a jumping off point for us to write personal songs.
The idea is a bit that like you're in the room, you know, that there's an intimacy to it, like the piano's telling you its story, really.
You give everybody a key, don't you?
Yes, when you arrive at the theatre, when you sit down, you get a key. So the idea is you're in the room with us, you're spending the night in this hotel room, and we see what events take place.
What was it like for you to walk into that room? Because I've actually been to the Chateau Marmont, and it is a very bizarre place, isn't it?
Well, you were saying it's very dark.
It is. I
Yeah.
remember it being very
So
dark.
the first thing is actually finding the door.
And then the light bulb went off over your head, so it was even more dark.
No, it's. I think whenever you go to a hotel, and this is something that we talk about in the show, you kind of think, well, what's happened in this room before? Sometimes you might get some unsavoury images of what might have happened.
I don't think that in a Premier Inn, I have to say.
Yeah, I think especially in a Premier Inn, you're thinking, what the hell was in here yesterday?
So you walk in there,
So
but
you've got that thing, but with this hotel being in that particular environs around Hollywood, so it's got the extra layer of it having connections to the film industry. So yeah, that was it. But I think everybody, when you're traveling, especially as we say in the show, because we're musicians, you end up traveling a lot and staying in hotels, often on your own, you know, because you're working. So there is that thing sometimes, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, really. You come back after a show and you just like sit there and think, oh, what am I going to do? I wonder what kind of peanuts they've got in this room. Where did they keep the hairdryer? Is it in one of those bags, or is it like hidden in a cupboard somewhere? Do they still have Bibles by the bedside table? You know, all this kind of stuff. So that's another thing that we kind of talk about in the show.
That's I guess the mundane part of being on the road as well. But the surroundings of the Chateau Marmont, they talk of opulence, but there is a lot of kind of sadness in those spaces as well. It's faded glamour.
No, that's it. I mean, the thing is, I suppose it's seen as a high-end hotel now, but for a long time, I think it was threatened with demolition for a while because it was built as an apartment block. Then there was the Great Depression of the 30s, so nobody could afford a flat. So they turned it into a hotel. So that's why it's just slightly unusual, because every room's got a kitchen. So it's almost like you're in somebody else's house. So it's kind of like, am I a burglar? And then in the kind of 50s, 60s, 70s, people would just live there. It was kind of a bit of a flop house.
Howard Hughes.
Not quite a flop house, but
for billionaires.
It kind of had a dip. So it's not always been like a super high-end thing. There's interesting stories.
Chilly, musically, the inspirations from the space itself, what did that give you?
Well, I've never been inside Room 29. I've been to the hotel, but I've never actually been inside the room. But yeah, I think a hotel, other than the psychological atmosphere, it is generally, like sonically speaking, a pretty dry type place. You know, there's a lot of carpet and they sort of like make the walls hopefully thick enough that you don't hear the people in the other room next to you. And so we sort of wanted the actual sound of the album to be like that. You know, that's why it's piano and vocal, very dry. And it's really as if your head is in the piano and Jarvis is whispering in your ear.
So then
it's a horrible image, that.
Yes.
Very frightening.
So then when thinking of putting it on stage, you could have done it just YouTube piano vocals, just doing it, but wanted to make it more conceptual.
Sure, there's a string quartet which we actually order up from room service halfway through the show, and that's how you know a hotel is good quality. You know, you can get a string quartet ordered
I wonder
up.
if you can actually do that. I bet the concierge at Chateau Marmont could get you a string quartet.
Maybe.
You know, and also, you know, the musically speaking, the golden age of Hollywood is very interesting to me because that's where a lot of the musicians who weren't interested in becoming sort of like avant-garde modern academics, you know, a lot of musicians then in the academic world were there's a lot of pressure on them to make sort of unlistenable but very conceptually interesting music. You know, we know all that stuff, right? It sounds like.
It's good.
So if you don't want to make that kind of music, then you would end up working for the films, and you could sort of indulge the old-fashioned passion for making people feel good with music, which is sort of what I believe. I'm kind of on team musical pleasure myself. So I'm fascinated that people like Bernard Herrmann, great composers like that, found a home in Hollywood and created what we now call the Hollywood sound, which is very lush, very romantic. So the string quartet is also there to give a suggestion of that.
And did it give you pleasure writing this?
Pardon me?
Did it give you pleasure writing this?
More than pleasure, it was a very deep collaboration with Jarvis, lasting a solid few years before we even really recorded it, and it was a thrill to work with Jarvis because of not only his writing ability as a lyricist, but to accompany him on stage is just something that makes me better as a musician.
What's it like?
It's very nice.
It is very nice.
Wow.
What's it like working together? How does the writing process work then between the two of you, lyrically and musically?
It was funny. Well, I'd been a fan of Gonzales, and he'd done some albums called Solo Piano. And funnily enough, I often would find myself listening to those records when I was on tour in a hotel. And I suppose that's maybe why I made the connection when I walked into the room and saw the piano there. So in the interim, we got to know each other a bit. He sent me bits of music. I would kind of listen to those and then write some stuff, sing over the top, send it back. And we just did that for a few years, like a back and forth thing, until we were ready to actually get together and record them in the studio together.
What mindset did you get into lyrically to write those lyrics? Did you try and inhabit the people that have been there?
Not too much, because they're all really seedy, horrible stories. So I didn't want to go too far down there.
Yeah, you don't want to go too Howard Hughes.
No, it was interesting because for me, because I've been doing radio stuff for like my 6 music show, and then also some stuff for Radio 4. So I'd got into a thing of researching stuff. So I kind of enjoyed doing that, applying that to something creative. I mean, I hope that the radio show is a bit creative as well, but actually for a creative project to go a bit deeper into investigating these stories and see which ones appealed, And usually it is the seedy, horrible ones that appeal, which will say something about me, I suppose, But.
Did you find that that this project came together? I mean, we talked about, Chilly was saying 3 years before you came to record it, but in terms of the actual creative process, did it come quite easily to you? The music that you wanted to make, the songs that you wanted to
Well,
write?
it was great because I knew my place. In
What do you mean by
Pulp, or
that?
when I've done stuff before, everybody mucked in and did everything. But in this, all the music came from Chilly, so and all the words came from me. So, and we did talk about the ideas of it, and sometimes he would help me by giving me a title and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it was great just to say, okay, well, that's the music. I'm not going to interfere with that. I'm just going to write something that fits on top of that.
Yeah, it's interesting
I
because
love that.
we call it a song cycle. A song cycle is a romantic classical form. I guess the most famous is Winter's Journey by Schubert, for example. But those composers usually would grab existing poetry, set it to music. That's also how, Broadway shows are often written, or Gilbert and Sullivan. But we did it the opposite. He was reacting to the music. So I like to call our method of working the reverse Gilbert and Sullivan.
How much did you research then the people that worked behind the scenes as well as the people that stayed
Well,
there?
that's important, isn't it? And I think we're trying to keep the balance between the stories of the famous people were there, but then generally talking about hotels. I mean, people just treat people who work at hotels really badly, don't they? Sometimes in posh hotels, they're just like... Because sometimes you get rich people going to posh hotels. So they're rich, so they think that that the money should make them happy. Then they get to the hotel and realise they're not happy. So therefore, they order really obscure things, thinking that thing will make them happy, so they're still not happy. So then they shout at the people who bring it to them.
This is the saddest moment on daytime radio ever.
So the bellboy really gets it. So we wanted to stick up. So we wanted to stick up for the bellboy.
It's like an alternative
Yeah.
reality.
So come on,
though.
let's hear it for the bellboy.
Come on.
Give it up. Yeah. Give it up.
Have either of you ever worked in a hotel?
I'm really having trouble with your accent. I'm sorry. Say again.
Really?
Yes.
God, that's a first. Have you ever worked in a hotel?
I have played piano in many, many hotels in my time. I've played piano in lingerie shops. I've played piano in
You never
really
told me that one.
crappy restaurants, but many, many hotels, yeah.
Why would a lingerie shop have a pianist in it? Pianist in it.
It was an upscale lingerie shop, and they thought that, sometimes people think that just having a piano somewhere adds a touch of class, whatever that's supposed to mean. And so I would perform, and they told me, we know it's not Carnegie Hall. And I'm like, oh, really? And at one point he said, have fun with it. If a lady walks by wearing red, you could play Lady in Red.
Wow. How long did you do that job for, Chilly?
Pardon me?
How long did you do my accent too?
No,
how long did you? How long?
It's just hard to
it's
hear on
Essex,
this
it's
stage.
Essex. I'm
It's
from
hard to
Essex.
hear.
How long did you do that?
I
job
did that for a few years.
few years?
Graduating from college. Why are you so shocked? It's,
Is it good money?
You know what?
Was there free lingerie?
Being a musician who works in a utilitarian fashion is very good training. It was very important for me to get off the idea that what I do is special or that everyone should listen, because sometimes you are just background music to create a mood, and that's made me, I think, humble in a
So
good
this is
way,
like
and
the
made me
Beatles.
appreciate now that people actually come to theaters, buy tickets to hear my own music. I can appreciate that much more. But I literally, and you won't be able to see this, obviously, if you're listening at home, but I once looked up when I was playing at the lingerie shop, and a woman was just doing this, covering her ears
Wow.
in an exaggerated fashion.
So this is the Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. You did your 10,000 hours in a lingerie shop, and that is why you are the success that you are today.
That's
you
right.
could put it all the way back to that.
Also, I wear a nice silky bathrobe on stage, so I think the influence, seeped in somehow.
Were you ever distracted from the playing, or were you just too focused?
I was never focused on the piano.
hence why you were asked to leave, was it, at some point?
Hey, it's pretty easy to play Lady in Red for the 1000th time, you know.
Jarvis, you never heard that one about Chilly?
I hadn't know. That's a side of your musical career that I've not heard before. Yeah.
Where does your friendship come from? How did your friendship start?
We bumped into each other in a metro station in Paris. I think we've both been to see Borat, haven't we?
That's right after we saw Borat.
Yeah. And we both thought it was funny, so that was the start of the friendship. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know how that conversation begins. I mean, you walk up to someone and say, "Excuse me, I've just seen an amazing film. Have you seen it?"
Well, we had actually met at some festivals where I had done either opening sets for Pulp, or we'd just been on the same bill. Yeah, exactly. And so we'd met a couple of times, and I heard that Jarvis had moved to Paris. I was living in Paris at that point as well. And I thought it was just a matter of time before we'd run into each other. We were in the same area. And sure enough, something as hilarious as Borat kind of brought us together. I think it's kind of fitting.
And were you playing music with each other very quickly after that, or was it just a friendship?
It kind of evolved around music, but also socially. And I would just say the first collaboration we did was a bit counterintuitive for what people might expect, because I was working on a kind of TV pilot that never got made, that had a character who was going to sing a kind of song called Francophobia about being an expat living in Paris, and there's lots of complaint about, believe me. And so I had written some lyrics, and I asked Jarvis to put them to music. So, sort of the actual opposite of how we had our roles defined for Room 29.
I've got a very romantic view of what it would be like to live in Paris. I've always wanted to.
It is nice.
Is it?
We've outgrown that Francophobia, haven't we?
Speak for yourself.
I have.
Come on, Brexit. You're a big fan of Brexit.
No comment. Come on, let's not go there.
Martin Creed has just joined us on the stage, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, Martin Creed.
Turner Prize winner and musician. Nihal and I went to see his show last night. It was absolutely great. We're at the studio on Potter Row. What do you think about this concept of writing a whole series, as these guys have done, about the Chateau Marmont?
Room 29.
Room 29 in
the Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, I think that everything is important. And so, a room in that hotel is just as good as anything else.
Maybe not as good as being in a lingerie shop.
It's quite interesting. Last night, if you go and see Martin Creed's show, and you should, at Words and Music, he starts off by saying that he feels a bit of a fraud for coming, because he's an act, but we're all acts. We're all our own acts. So you try and make it quite difficult for yourself to come on stage, thus to prove you're going beyond just the normal of being an act. So you hopped on stage backwards.
Aye.
When did you come up with that idea that you needed to make your entrance difficult so as to not seem as though you were some kind of fraud?
Well, I hate feeling fake, and when I come on stage, I always feel like it's very artificial, because it's like because I'm standing outside thinking, okay, I'm just about to go on, but then I'm thinking, no, wait a minute, no, I already am on, because I'm me, I'm on, all the time, and so I'm not, I can't come on because I already am on, so it's impossible to come on. And if it looks easy, that's terrible, I think, because I want to be true and honest. So then I thought I should make it look difficult.
Right, so walking on would be too easy.
Aye. Well, I would make it look easy, and it isn't easy, because it's impossible. It's actually impossible. I was trying to do the impossible by coming on. And so I thought I need to make it look difficult. So I did it backwards, hopping backwards.
Jarvis, ever come out onto stage backwards?
No, but I know what you mean, because it's. I've always thought that's funny. That's why I don't like it when people don't talk to the audience. Because it's like 1 minute you stood there and you're just the same as everybody else, and then suddenly, because you're suddenly on a surface that's 18 inches above everybody else, and suddenly the relationship changes. But I do like, I suppose, accepting the artificiality of it. I do like that as well.
Aye.
But I get what you're saying.
Aye.
I'm not going to. I'd be too scared to do it backwards. We've got lots of. Also, we've got a stage that slopes down, so I'd probably end up in the orchestra pit. And there's lots of furniture as well, so it'd be dangerous, actually.